Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callus, coming to you with episode 724. This will be reaching yours potentially on the 21st of February, the year of our Lord 2025. Tonight, or today, we're going to embark on a conversation directly related to the quote that is attributed to Edgar Allan Poe, "Believe nothing you hear and only half that you see." The title will be Not What You Hear. So, before we get there, let me remind you once again, like, share, subscribe. Follow me on your podcatcher of choice. Join me on the social media that you prefer. I have a page and a group over at Facebook. I am at MeWe on occasion. I am a pro at Gab. I dabble in Twitter. And for now, you can still find the show, or at least most of the episodes, on YouTube. Very well. Also, keep in mind, rating and reviewing is uber important. Super helpful. Makes a big, big difference. We are being shadow banned, but that's life. You can complain about it, or you can do something about it. So we choose to do. All right. Here we go. On with the show. All right. So for those of you paying attention, even somewhat, we've been hearing in panic bated breath all the terrible things that Donald is doing. He and his right hand, Elon, are going to destroy the world. Oh, I mean, just the United States. Oh, just the Constitution. Oh, just the federal government. They just can't seem to make up their mind. I want to be clear. I do not support an imperial president. I didn't support the imperial president that had the name Obama, nor the one that had the name Bush. The one that said his name was Biden. And quite frankly, pretty much every president in my lifetime has been a little imperialistic for my taste. That for the only candidate that ever truly was believable when he said, "We need to quit doing all this stuff," was the irreplaceable Dr. Ron Paul. Now, the next best thing that we have is his son Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, both from Kentucky, not without coincidence. Now, I know there's a handful, perhaps, of other really good congressmen or senators out there, but the vast majority, in my opinion, aren't worth it. Okay. So let's take on a couple of the complaints. Now, I may have covered an angle of this when I was talking about Doge, right? This has to do with what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and then reality, okay? So we heard that Trump wanted to throw out all the Palestinians from Gaza. Now, depending on which version you heard, or what time period you heard it, or what your frame of reference is, Gaza is a small portion of a country called Israel. It was ostensibly given over to the Palestinians so they could have their own little space. From what I know, historically, they have done nothing positive with that space. Now, you can choose to look at it the other side of the equation. They created a giant reservation, much like what happened to the American Indians, or to a lesser extent, the Japanese during World War II that were in the United States. They were put there on a reservation. Now, all things being considered, they had access to a lot of money, a lot of help, and even still, they didn't seem to be overly concerned about taking care of their people. Now, you can hate on the Israelis all you want. You can say that the Israelis set them up for failure all you want. But at the bottom line here, they had their responsibility for their section of land to take care of their people, the Palestinians. From the best I can tell, they weren't very interested in doing that. So the Donald gets in office and says, well, you know what? We can just go ahead and resettle them. We can put them somewhere else because clearly they're not going to take care of it. And the Israelis are tired of dealing with their stuff. And they're going to push them all the way out. Now, I don't know what you, dear listener, know about rhetoric. But from what I understand is you make bold claims, you state you're going to take significant action, and you wait to see what happens. And wouldn't you know it, apparently, again, because you can't believe what you see or what you hear, you don't really know what is the actual fact that's going on. But apparently, Egypt, Jordan, perhaps even Saudi Arabia, have decided they're going to step in and help. Now, whether or not this actually happens or whether or not this gets any long-term difference or change still remains to be seen. But just the mere threat of the United States coming in and taking over Gaza was enough to get these people off their backsides, to get them to be interested in this group of people that, from all accounts, got a bad deal. I mean, if you're normal, average, Hamas, non-terrorist Palestinian, maybe you're a majority, maybe you're not. I don't really care. You're getting a bad deal. Your leadership seems more interested in picking a fight with the Israelis, and the Israelis seem more interested in bombing you into oblivion. It would be nice if somebody else got off their backsides and did something to help out. And it appears that's what's happening. Now, again, you can't get a straight story, and we can't believe what we're hearing, and we can very rarely believe what we're seeing. But if you listen to news outside of these United States, maybe, just maybe, you'll get a piece of the picture that indicates that, yeah, now the Arab brethren are going to step in and look after their Palestinian cousins. Now, I would like to believe that. I would like to give Trump kudos for pulling that off. But again, what's real? What's really happening? Can we know for 100% certainty? Not yet. But the proof is in the pudding. And it's strange to me that for decades, nothing got done. No one seemed to be interested. Now, I'm glad we didn't go the route that we did when Reagan sent the Marines to Beirut. That didn't work out well for Beirut. It didn't work out well for us. And in case you're wondering, Beirut is in Lebanon, which ostensibly was a quasi-Christian country that tried to treat everybody fairly decently. And now it's still a wasteland, based upon what I've read. And again, you can't believe what you hear, half of what you see. So what's real? I don't know. Now, to be honest, I have zero interest in ever going to the Middle East. I don't think there's anything there that would be that fantastic that I need to go see it and put my life at risk. Now, I know there's tons of other people out there that would disagree with me, but that's just my personal thought on the opinion scale here, that it's not that important. But that doesn't mean that I want a bunch of people getting killed. It doesn't mean that I support, let's call it eradication, right? Some would call it genocide. I'm not sure I want to go that far. But again, we don't need a bunch of people being killed. It's just not a good thing. We all used to understand that. Well, we're on that topic, right? The Donald had said early on, there would be no war in Ukraine had I been president. Now, depending on who you're listening to and what you've seen, Zelensky's been hung out to dry. The Ukrainians are losing badly, or the Russians are getting bled dry. It doesn't really matter. In case you're not sure, what's left of NATO isn't worth the tanks that they put on the field. And Ukraine never, ever had a chance. Now, I've covered this previously in older episodes, if you will. And my official opinion is they're both bad guys. They're both cousins that we don't want to associate with, that are dirty. They fight with each other, and we would be best suited to stay out of it. But we didn't do that. In fact, we egged on Ukraine. We egged on the fight with Putin in Russia. We watched a whole lot of people die. We threw a lot of money in it. Now, yes, I understand. There's a lot of evidence to suggest there's been some significant kickbacks and money laundering going on in Ukraine, including potentially some illicit creative things going on there. I don't know the details. And once again, depending on who's reporting and how they're reporting, you can't believe anything that you hear and only half of what you see. So what's real? Well, we know some untoward stuff was going on there. We know that NATO was messing around with Ukraine, and that's always been a bright line for Russia. Ukraine must stay neutral, or Ukraine must stay out of NATO, depending on how you want to look at it, but that was always a bright line. Now, if you want to go play ticky-tack games, whatever, the Soviet Union imploded or dissolved, if you will, in the early 90s. And one of the understandings they had is NATO was not going to take advantage of it, and NATO was going to stay out of their business, and the United States was going to respect the territorial construct of Russia. We really haven't done that. In fact, we've done nothing more than constantly kick the people when they're down. Now, look, the Soviet Union was a terrible thing. The Soviet Union was worse than the Nazis in many respects. The communist Chinese put both of them to shame, but we found a way to deal with the Chinese and the communist Chinese, if you will, without being nearly as antagonistic as the former Soviet Russians. So I got to ask myself, what's at play here? What kind of games are afoot? Again, we don't know. And depending on what you read or what you see, you can't know for sure either. But once again, the Donald had said, we need to end this war. It doesn't really matter what the outcome is as long as we stop the killing. Now, I know there are other things at play here, and I know there are probably some kind of strategic interests in, that need to be discussed or thought about. That's the word I want to go with there. There's other things at play, for sure. But we want to end this, right? Now, whether you love or hate the Donald, he wants to end the war, which is one of the reasons why he's currently the president, because we're tired of it. We don't need yet another war, especially another war in Europe. If there's one thing the Europeans excel at, it's killing each other. And of course, they're right now committing a suicide of their culture by importing millions of Muslims that hate them, but that's another story altogether. But the president wants to stop the war. The president's negotiating directly with Russia because the Ukrainian leadership that we helped put in place is not capable of doing the job. NATO has dropped the ball. NATO seems content to send all those Ukrainians to die for nothing. Ending the war is a primary goal of the current administration. Now, keep in mind, in both instances, things are being said and done, but the end goal is to stop the killing. That is not the behavior of an imperial president. That is not the behavior of a dictator. That is not the behavior of all the various things that they have referred to him as. Just take a moment and pay attention to that. Now, I think part of this boils down to the idea that we couldn't get anybody to do anything about it before, right? So, as of late, the Donald's been kind of poking the bear with Greenland. Now, depending who you talk to, Greenland wants to be independent from Denmark. Greenland wants to be independent, period. Some of Greenland would like to come and join the United States. Some of the Greenland people would like to be a protectorate, but not a state. Now, I'm kind of sympathetic to that, right? They're not really getting anything out of Denmark. They're closer to the United States than they are Denmark. They're actually technically closer to Canada than Denmark. But the United States has a very, let's call it, fraternalistic relationship with its cousin to the north, Canada. And if we can pick up Greenland as a protectorate, there is a huge strategic gain there. Now, you might think it's crazy. You might think it's quote-unquote imperialistic. But realistically, it's kind of going back to the Monroe Doctrine, right? Now, you can make all the arguments you want about picking fights with Mexico, picking fights with South and Central American countries, retaking the Panama Canal. You can nitpick all those things. But what's the strategy at play here? What's the concern here? our current government leadership seems to understand that there's no longer a unipolar world, i.e., there is not a singular superpower. It is a multipolar world. And in a multipolar world, you have to protect your borders. You have to protect your interests. And you have to do it in such a way that you're not picking fights with your near neighbors. So if you're going to Denmark and saying, hey, we'd like to buy Greenland, we'll make a deal with you. Now, Greenland has got lots of natural resources that can and should be taken and put into the economy, if you will. There's a valid reason why we would want that. Is land to be exploited, if you want me to phrase it that way. The Panama Canal is the linchpin of transportation between the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Now, yes, I understand some of the largest ships in the world can't get through there. Fully understand. But you need to remember, we went through a lot of trouble to get that canal built about 100 years ago. We gave up control to the country of Panama, assuming that they would honor the deal we made with them. And that hasn't really come to pass. Now, we should be the last country in the world to be surprised that you make a deal with somebody and they break it, since we've done that to every country, including ourselves, historically. But are we still in a position to do something about it? Well, I think we might still be. And I'm not going to pick on Jimmy Carter. I think he thought he was doing the right thing. I'm not going to, push this off on any one party, because generally the consensus was the right thing to do was turn the canal back over to the country of Panama. They were going to be our good little allies until they sold control on both sides of the port, literally to the Chi-Coms. But we have to determine, is it worth fighting over? Is it just worth asserting control over? But again, we're staying out of the fights in Europe, and we're focusing on the things here at home. Now, I read an article by Matthew Bracken. If you don't know who Matt Bracken is, you need to go look him up. He's written at least 3 fiction books that I found were great. I guess it'd be fair to say he's a military strategist of some sort, former Navy SEAL. Interesting background. But he talked about the notion of what he sees is at play here. And that is the Trump administration is looking to secure the North American continent, which is where Greenland and Panama come into play. Now, you can agree with the goals of this or not, but if you at least understand what's at play here, perhaps you can give a little grace. But again, the problem is what we're being told in the media, what we're seeing on the TV, isn't the truth. Now, it might be some truth. It may be blatant lies. We just don't know. They're just so good at it. And I really think it boils down to an idea that he has to do it now because he's not going to have another 4 years to do it. He's going to have to force it through now so that it's a done deal when the transition takes place. I think the question is, if it's not me, meaning him, will you? And I don't think he feels confident that his successor will be able to pull it through. I mean, the man is known for making deals, so you got to give him a little credit. So now, if you look at that scenario, what do you think? Do you think this is a net positive for these United States? Do you think we all benefit? I think it's pretty clear that if we can secure the North American continent and we protect ourselves first and foremost, that's kind of where I want to be. That's kind of where the whole notion of America first comes from, right? If you're going to make America great again, we have to be America. Now, there is an underlying concern here. Let's not ignore it completely. I don't want a North American Union. I don't think merging Mexico and the United States with these or with Canada is an end goal that is appropriate. But you could make the argument, and I'd be willing to listen to you and hear you out on it, that that's the end goal here. And it may be. But if the end goal prevents us from getting sucked into a war over in Europe, I would seriously consider it. Because I don't want that. I would imagine you don't want it either. Now, with all that's been going on here, and, well, what's it been? A month? 30 days? In 30 days, we've had all this turmoil and quote-unquote trauma going on. Look here, look there, look at everywhere. I understand that there's a lot of change going on, and I understand there's lots of concerns. We talked about this a little bit briefly on the Wednesday show when I was talking about DOGE, right? There are a whole lot of federal agencies that we believe are necessary, that we believe do a good thing, that we believe we can't live without. But the reality is we were successful long before they existed, and we'll be just fine once they're gone. We need to find our bearings. We need to, quote, get your sea legs again, right? If we get rid of this dead weight of bureaucracy, imagine what we can do. Look here and see what we've been able to do without it. The reality in my mind is nothing is going to be unfixable. The fact that 30,000 or 100,000 bureaucrats that, quite frankly, most of them are doing jobs that are make work or are an expense, a cost with very little return, is a net positive. Now, it sucks for their family. Let's be honest about that. It does suck to be that family that has a mother or father or whatever out of work, and maybe they're going to have to relocate. But perhaps they'll find something that's a net positive for the rest of the country once they're out of that government job. I suspect that once we become more agile and once we find a way to go forward, we're all going to benefit. This is kind of the libertarian dream, right? Less government. No government. Well, it won't be no government, but no government interference on a lot of these things. Freedom and liberty grow, and people get enthusiastic about getting things done and making a way to do things without having somebody put the boot on their neck. But here's the question. Will they do it? Will they show up? Will you put in the effort to fill the gap? Will you be willing to do maybe a little bit of extra to take advantage of this breathing room, this time that we have to see what America is really made of? One of the things that people brought up, and I got to admit they have a point, right? There are people that quote unquote need help, that we're being helped by government. And once that's taken away, where government gets sidelined, the question is, will the churches show up? Will private charities show up? Will we be taking care of the least of these? Well, the Lord wants a cheerful giver. And I'm not sure anybody's cheerful when it comes to paying their taxes. I mean, even some of these rich guys that talk about, well, tax me more. That's blow. They're making stuff up because nobody prevents them from writing a check for more. They're the ones that have the attorneys and the accountants that find the way to keep as much money in their pocket as possible. And I don't begrudge them for that. I mean, they wrote the rules in the first place. They know how to play the game. I mean, the old adage is the poor people don't give you jobs. It's rich people that give you jobs. Well, that's true and false because a lot of poor people are customers. And without customers, you don't have a product or you don't have a service, and that person can't be rich. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and I wish we would remember that. So, yes, we do need to look after the least of these, but perhaps if we're not bankrupting ourselves to pay for the very parasitic, bureaucratic federal monstrosity on Potomac, we'll have some money left over to look after that. But you got to remember, don't get distracted by all the things that are going on. Focus on the things that you can change right in front of you. This may be the last chance for liberty. This may be the last chance for America. Who knows? And again, I don't think Trump's my savior. I know there's some people out there apparently that really believe that. No. I don't think Trump's necessarily saving America. No, we the people are. He's perhaps the tool we're using to make that happen. He's not perfect. He's going to make mistakes. He's, and for people that think that, well, if Trump wants it, it must be right. No. You have to hold his feet to the fire as well. Because remember, we don't want an imperial president, but we have one. We've had one for decades. And it's our imperial president. It's our imperial president that's taking the very powers that we've allowed to be accumulated under a single person and using them to do some good things, yes, but I'm hoping it will spur the Congress to say, yeah, you know what, we're really not on board with the president having this much power. I'm hoping maybe the Supreme Court will step in and say, yeah, these executive orders, they don't have that much sway. Oh, but while we're at it, yeah, you've got a couple of really good points here. We're going to go ahead and address them. Yeah, the 14th Amendment doesn't grant birthright citizenship to people that hop the border. Yeah, there really are only two sexes, male and female. Yeah, and there's a bunch of people that want to claim they're this, that, or the other. That's fine. But as far as all government paperwork's concerned, yeah, it's male and female. Now, there is, I guess, technically a third thing of intersex, meaning indeterminate. But that's, 1% or less? You can make that exception to the rule, right? One of the things I saw in the last few days is I want to make sure I get this right. The National Association of Midwives. Midwives. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, it's typically ladies that are formerly nurses or perhaps are currently nurses, and then they specialize in birthing children. But their organization apparently doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman anymore. Apparently they think that men that cut off body parts can become women. Apparently they think that if you are not a woman, you can still feed your baby through your chest. That's not how it works. Now, look, we have to have compassion. We have to treat all of our patients well. Yes. We don't want to create a society, especially on the medical side of things, where patients won't come, they won't get the care that they need. Perhaps if we invest a little more in the mental health realm of getting people through a point in life where they actually can make peace with who they are biologically, they'll be in a better place. But to me, it's just extremely disappointing, these quote-unquote thought leaders, right? The leaders of an entire organization that is supposed to help women who have babies, take care of them and their babies, apparently don't even know which is which anymore. So if that's the kind of, thought leadership we have, and I'm seeing all this stuff now that you're supposed to go ahead and line up like little lemmings to get whatever newest shot they're giving you, right? Now, look, I think the last 4 years have taught us you can't trust government. You certainly can't trust the quote-unquote government leaders or the government authorities because, quite frankly, they're going to tell you whatever it is they want to tell you to get you to do what they want you to do. Now, it doesn't mean they're always wrong. It doesn't mean they're always lying. But at the end of the day, they haven't earned our trust. And I don't care if the Donald rolls out tomorrow and says you do X, Y, or Z. You have to be able to critically think. You have to be able to examine everything that you're being told or shown and determine, is this real? Is this appropriate? If anything, and I applauded him at the time, and I would still applaud him, Donald Trump was pretty hands-off on how the states handled the problem in the pandemic, right? He didn't mandate a whole heck of a lot. Those abuses and lockdowns were courtesy of our governors in the counties. And if we haven't learned a lesson, it's that, yes, we can have an imperial president, but the imperial president can do good things. If you want to solve the problem of the imperial president, whether it's Donald Trump or his successor, that requires the Congress to get off their backside. That requires the states to get involved and stand up for their people and their states. I'm hoping that some of the leftist reaction to the actions taking place at the federal level will bring that about. Whether I agree with them or not, if you're right, you're right. It's my hope. There's plenty more to say on this and a whole lot of other things, but I want to be cognizant. It is a Friday. I want you to go into the weekend and enjoy the show, if you will. Not my show necessarily, but that too. But what's going on? There's a whole lot of people weeping that need to weep. There's a whole lot of people worried that, quite frankly, have been making most of us worried for years. We need to sort out a way forward. We need to figure out what the future looks like. And I'm confident that we'll get there. But for right now, enjoy the show. And until Monday, I will see you on the other side.
For all your Texas fashion tees, it's TexianPride.com. Whether you're out honky-tonkin' in Austin, bucking Broncos in Fort Worth, or strolling the San Antonio Riverwalk, Texian Pride is here for you. Support a Texan-owned business and show off your love for Texas with style. Visit TexianPride.com for your next fashionable Texas tee.